In this video, we will learn how to perform some analytics when we have bivariate data, that is two columns of data, in which one column is quantitative and the other is qualitative. This is part 2 of this series of videos on analytics for bivariate data. In part 1, we had looked at the case where both the variables were quantitative in nature. So this is a very different case, one quantitative and one qualitative column of data. So this is our example data. Order amount is obviously quantitative and state is obviously qualitative. So what can we do with this data? So right now this data is ungrouped. So there's not much you can do with this ungrouped data. So let's say we try to insert a column chart. We get nothing meaningful. Now, if we just select these two columns of data and say insert a column chart, we get the same thing, nothing meaningful. Now, if I copy this to the right, and now if I select these two columns and insert a column chart, we get something which might appear meaningful and useful, but it's not. Why? Because if you look at the x-axis, there's so many Florida labels. So if I have 13 columns of Florida and 8 columns of Georgia, I cannot really make any meaningful interpretations with this chart. So this also does not work. So what we have to do is, first, we have to aggregate this data, sort of transform this original transaction data to aggregate data. And once we have aggregate data, we can do something with that. So we will learn some new functions in Excel on how to aggregate data. So these are the new functions we will learn: dsum, dcount, daverage, dmin, and dmax. And we will learn how to use these functions to transform the original transaction data to aggregate data like this. So for each state, I want to know the sum of all the order amounts, the count, the average, the min, and the max. So let's learn how to do this. So first we will learn how to do the sum of all the order amounts for Florida using the dsum function. So the dsum function has three parameters: the database, that's my database; the field, so that's my field, order amount; and the criteria. So let me write the criteria. So the criteria is that state is Florida. So this is my criteria range, this is my database range, and order amount is my field. So I will write the dsum function here, dsum, the database, and the field is order amount, and the criteria is this. So this will give me the sum of all the order amounts for the state of Florida. And here I can say equal to this, there. Similarly, I can do dcount, database, order amount, and the criteria. So I will do equal to this, and that's my dcount. Daverage, database, order amount, and the criteria. So the average comes from here. Min, dmin, database, order amount, criteria. And dmin comes from here. And lastly, max. So dmax, database, order amount, criteria equal to that. Of course, I can format these as comma since they are amounts. Okay, so as my dsum, dcount, daverage, dmin, and dmax. So for Georgia, I can create another criteria range. Now in these formulas, we want to fix the columns so that when we copy this formula to the right, the columns don't change. Okay, so now if I copy these formulas here, we will get the numbers for Georgia, and for Georgia I will do this equal to this equal to this equal to this and equal to this. Then for state of South Carolina, we copy these functions, and then for state of North Carolina, we copy these functions, and then finally equal to this, equal to this, equal to count, equal to count, equal to average, equal to average, equal to South Carolina min amount, equal to North Carolina min amount, equal to South Carolina max amount, equal to North Carolina max amount. There. So that's our aggregate data. So using this as input, we can draw all kinds of charts. So for example, using state and sum of order amounts, we can insert a column chart or a bar chart or a pie chart, and we give appropriate axis titles and titles here. For count, we can insert either a column chart or a bar chart or a pie chart. Let's do a pie chart. Using the average amount and the state, we can insert a bar chart there, and so on. You get the idea. Okay. Now, you might be thinking, wow, this is a very long process. First you create as many criteria ranges as there are states. What if I have 50 states? Yes, you have to create 50 criteria. And then you have to write these functions and then copy them for all the states. And then you have to get the values from here to here. Well, the question is there a faster way to get these aggregate data values? And the answer is yes, there is. We do that using pivot tables. So the next part of this lesson is how to do pivot tables. So I'm going to copy the data from here, from sheet 1 to sheet 2, and then we will see how to do pivot tables. So we select our database and we say insert pivot table, and it selects this range B3 through D28, and we want to create this aggregated table in existing worksheet. Location, let's say here. Now the fun begins. On the right here, we see that it picked up the field names from the first row of the database, order ID, order amount, state. Now I want to slice and dice the order amount, so I check order amount and notice that it goes in this quadrant called values, and it comes as sum of order amount. And when I click on state, it appears in this quadrant called rows. And that's it. We have created this table which we had here, but we got it so fast. We did not have to worry about these formulas and functions and then copying these numbers from here to here. We got it very quickly. Similarly, count. So if we select our database and we say insert in existing, suppose here we want the count, so we'll select order amount under values, and here by default it says sum of order amount. So we'll click on this and click on value field settings and click on count and then click on state. That's it. We got the second column that we had here. We have that. Next, for average, again we select the database, insert pivot table, existing, let's say here, order amount, state, but change this to average. Value field settings, average. There. Min and max. Select the database, insert pivot table, existing, let's say here. Order amount, value field settings, min, and then state. There. Here we can say state, here we can say state, here we can say state. And lastly, max, same thing. Select the database, insert pivot table, existing, location, let's say here, order amount, value field settings, max, and state. So that's how we can translate the original ungrouped data into aggregate data and then use this as input for various charts. So now we can say insert a column chart using this. So for any one of these data columns, we can draw any type of chart that we want and then tell a story. And of course I can change the title, sum of order amounts by state, and we can add axis titles, state, and sum of order amount. We don't need this. By the way, when we create a chart using a table that was created by a pivot table, you get a filter option in which you can select the states that you're interested in. You're only interested in Florida and Georgia, you can select only Florida and Georgia. If you're interested in all, you can select all. And this is just telling you that this is a sum of order amount. Now, if you created a column chart from here, like we did here, we did not have the filtering option. But when you create a column chart using a pivot table, then this option is there. So that concludes this lesson.